Hey everybody, I'm Amanda with DevExpress, and welcome to the final part of this three-part series on creating an ASP.NET blog engine with DevExpress, presented by technical evangelist Don Wibier. In the final part of this series, Don will conclude by showing you how the pieces all fit together and the blog becomes operational. Thank you so much for joining us. I will now hand things over to Don Wibier.
Thanks, Amanda, and welcome again, everybody. In the first webinar, we have set up a storage system for the blog engine with the powerful ORM data model wizard, which in turn generated all of the persistent object classes for our data model. In the second webinar, we have taken a look at how to implement the design into ASP.NET master pages and content pages. We've also checked out responsive design and have taken a quick look at CSS media queries. This resulted in the main infrastructure for the user interface of our blog engine. In this webinar, we're going to bind the data model and the design together and make the blog engine functional. We're going to set up a reusable and extendable system with some nice JavaScript tricks. On the fly, we will add some additional styling and CSS media queries. So let's see what we have done in the last webinar by going to Visual Studio. And let me start it up. Now let's recap what we have done in the last webinar. We have added the responsive design into the master page, and as you can see, things will just drop down if the screen gets smaller. And if the screen gets even smaller, you will see the logo resize. What we've also done is we've added this little button, which will open a pop-up control, and that will also be repositioned while we resize the screen. Obviously, we are now going to implement some stuff in this pop-up window, and we will start by adding the OK and the cancel button for storage or cancellation of your action. Let's go to the project, and I have prepared just a couple of things to make it all happen within 45 minutes, because otherwise it would be too much. So what I've done, I have created a folder with custom controls, and we will first take a look at the pop-up footer control. So if I open it up, you'll see that I've inserted a couple of divs. One will be a container div, which will be this one. The other one is a spacer div, because I want the buttons on the right side of the pop-up. And I've got a div for the OK button, and I've got one for the cancel button. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to insert two buttons in this control. And that is being done by going to the common controls and double-click the button. I will give it a name called, the text called OK, and I will give it an ID, which is called BTX-OK. I'll also set an additional property, which is the auto postback. If you leave it to true, then if you want to do some JavaScript and you want to do callbacks and stuff, that's not going to happen, because that postback is being initiated as well. So we'll do the auto postback, we set it to false. I'm just going to copy this line, and I'm going to paste it in the cancel section as well. And I'm going to call this one BTX cancel. I'm going to change the name to cancel, and that's about it. If you might remember, in the preview that we did, there were some nice little icons next to the text, and that's a really cool feature which is implemented recently in the DevExpress controls. I can just switch to design mode. I'll go to the properties of the OK button, and there will be a property called image. If I expand it, there will be a sub-property called icon ID. I'm going to click that. You will get an editor with all nice icons which can be included in this button. And you can choose 16 by 16 pixels, or you can say give me 32 by 32. You can choose colored or grayscaled. I mean, there is one for every action. I'm going to go for the 60 ones, and I'm going to click this one. And as you can see, design time, the image is already displayed. I'm going to do the same for the cancel button, and I want to have that red one. So this is how you can enhance your buttons by giving it some icons. I also need to include some script for these buttons, because the buttons need to close or cancel that action that we were doing. So if I go back, I'll go to the client-side events of the cancel button, and in the click event, I'm going to put some code, and that will be fairly simple. That code will just look like this. It will just check if there is a window visible, and if it is, it will hide it. If I go to the OK button, that will do a bit more script, but it's also not that spectacular. So I will put it in and explain it straight after. What we need to do here is we need to do something on the server to store our blog post. So instead of just hiding that window, I will be doing a perform callback, which will make a round trip to the server so I can get the values in my form and handle them. And in the end callback in the master page, we've coded it last week, the window will be closed. So this is an easy way to perform some manipulation on the server side. And what this means is I can now drag them in the master page. And for that, I'll also go to design view. And we've got those pop-up windows here. And I'll go to edit templates. I'll first pick window 0, and I'll go to the footer content template. And I'm just going to get that pop-up footer. And I'm going to put it in. I'm going to do the same for the footer content template of the second window. I'm going to get that one. I'm going to drag it in. So that's it. What we now need to do is we need to create a control which will allow us to edit our blog post or insert a new one. And for that, I've already created the post control at ASPx. It's just an ordinary user control. It's nothing spectacular about it. What is nice here is we are going to use another new control of DevExpress, which was only released recently, which is the layout, the form layout. And that one can be found in the toolbox. And I will put it in and I will show it to you how it looks. So I'm going to paste it in, and I will switch to design mode, because then you will see the design time representation of the form, and I shall also show you how beautiful this works, because I can just click edit layout, and as you can see I will have my form here, and I can add whatever you like. I can add like a layout group, for instance. So if I do that, I will get the group here, and I can add additional items in that group by just going to here, and for instance I want to have like a checkbox. So you'll see that the checkbox is in here. Well, you can create whatever layout that you like. For now I'm going to leave this one, because we're going to need this one. These controls: a text box for the title, a checkbox, a combo box, a token box, which is also a very nice control, a memo for adding some text, add and upload control, and yeah, that's about it. So it will look nicely in your designer, and we will need a couple of additional things, because in this project, we're going to bind some data to, for instance, the token box and the combo box. And we do that by inserting two other controls. One of them is in the ORM components, and it's called the Xpo Data Source, because we're going to bind to some data which is in the data model. So I'm going to double click it, and it's already there. And if I go to properties, you'll see that there are a number of things that you need to specify here, and one of them is very important, the type name. So if I drop down this combo box, you'll see that all my persistent classes which we defined in the first webinar are populated in this box. And this is going to be the group, so I'm going to select group. I'm going to add in a second one, because we will also need one for the tags. I'm going to just select this one. So before we're going to run this, I'm going to change a couple of minor properties here, which I'll explain. I'll switch back to design mode, and I'm going to tell you what's happening here. I've changed the name, and I've changed the default sorting. That can be populated design time as well. And well, the types that I just specified. There's also one event that you need to code, and that is the Init Event, because you need to assign a session, which is one of the base concepts of persistent objects, and you need to assign a session to this control. So I've created one event, and it will get that session. So this is basically our form. What I'm going to do now, before we can see it in action, I'm going to go back to the master page, and I'm going back to the pop-up control, and I'm going to edit the templates again. We'll now go to the window content template, and I'm going to drag that post control in. I will do the same for the second window. And I'm going to edit and the edit. Now I'm switching back to design mode because I noticed that I've picked the wrong place where to put that control. So I will just remove that one, and I'm going to put it here. And I'll do the same for the insert one. So I'm going to put that one in here, so we'll get the right stuff. I'm going to clean this up. And now I'm going to reload this page. And I'm going to hit plus. Well, and as you can see, the form that we just created is already inserted in this pop-up, and the buttons are still there, so I can cancel it for now. And that is basically our facility to insert blog posts. So before we will actually store it, we need to do some additional coding in the post control. So I'll go back to the C#, the code behind, and I will implement an interface. And that interface I've already added to the project, and let me show it. That interface is the iEditor interface. It only has two methods, load from object, save to object. So let's go to this code and let's tell him that I want to implement the iEditor interface. I'm also going to go to implement interface, so I'll get two methods which will both throw an exception. Fortunately, I'm having this code prepared already, so we are not going to type it in all. And we'll go through it really fast. So this is how the load from object works. It will just locate the post if there was an ID specified, and it will set all the form elements with its properties. It will also load the tag control, and in case there was no ID specified or this post was not found, then I'm going to just clear all the controls. So that's fairly simple. The save to data object will basically do the same, but the other way around. What I'm doing here is I'm also checking if there was an ID specified, so if we need to insert a new post or update an existing one. And if we're going to create a new post, I'm just creating a new persistent object. And if we are editing an existing post, I will use a method called findByObject, which is a persistent objects method to do a select basically on the post table. Here I'll do the same vice versa. So if I now reload the page, I should be able to store a post, and that is being done by entering my first post. I will now select a group, but unfortunately we haven't added any groups yet, so I'll start a test group. And in this is the token box. Here we can specify our tags. So we want to tag this post, and I'm going to give it also a test tag. And if you press the column key, it will create this nice box, and you can create another test tag B, and so on and so on. You could also click the X to remove it, but I think this behavior is seen on many sites, so you should know how it works probably. I'm going to enter one line of code, and I'm going to hit OK. Okay, now it should be stored, but we cannot see it yet because we haven't implemented something to display posts. So let's go back to Visual Studio and get our master page to start with. Well, as you can see, it's basically completely empty, so let's do something here. And what I've also coded up front is I've created a base page, which is a class which is derived from the system.web.ui.page. And I've implemented a couple of things because I know that we're going to use that on all the other pages as well. And what it basically does is it needs to know what the data view control will be to display the posts, and I've put in some loading mechanism and some other stuff, and we'll get to that a bit later. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the C# one, and I'm going to tell I want you to be derived from base class, base page. What I can do now, I can right click it and I can say implement the abstract class. And in this case there are two abstract methods which were defined in the page, and they are pretty simple. It is the data view control and the data view criteria operator. I'm going to switch back because we don't have a data view yet. So I'm going to switch back to the page. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to switch back to design. And in the toolbox, I'm going to look up the ASPx data view. Here it is. Double click it. and it's being inserted. Well, this thing already looks nice now, but we're going to change a couple of things, and one of the things that we're going to change, because we're in a responsive site, so I'm going to the properties, is that the width of this control should be set to 100%. I'll also set a couple of other properties, and I will do that by just pasting it in, so I'm sure I will not forget any of them. So I've given it a name, I've set the width to 100%, I set the column count because I just want them on top of each other. So I've set the column count to 1 and rows per page to 4. Another really cool feature is the endless paging mode, which will make additional items load on demand. So I've put the rows per page to 4, so maybe we can see how that works once the blog is working. I've put in an item template, and in the item template I've put a user control, and that user control is used for displaying the blog. Well, also I have prepared that user control, and let me show that to you really quickly. In this user control is in this stage very simple setup. As you can see, I'm using data binding expressions to display the title. I'm using some other stuff to display the tags, and I'm putting in a hyperlink with more. Later we will be adding the gallery, which will show our images, but we'll come to that a bit later. I'm going to just do a quick build, and I'm heading back to the site. And obviously I forgot to tell my abstract class that there is a data view now, and the data view is called DXPosts, and I'm also going to paste in the criteria operator class, which determines what posts to see, and I only want to see active posts on the home page, and this DXPosts is going to be returned, and that is exactly the one that I've specified here. So a quick build, check out the home page again, and the first post that we just did is already in here. You can also see that the test group where I put the post in is already in the menu. And that's because I've also prepared a bit of code which will populate the menu. And I'll show that to you immediately. In the page load, I'll call an update menu. And in the update menu, I will be doing a couple of things, because what you also might have noticed is that there is only the plus and the hash has gone in this scenario, and that is because we are not allowed to edit a post in this particular place. So how have I done that? First of all, I'm looking up those two menu items, the insert and the edit one, and I'm checking if the current page implements an iHome page or an iPost page. And if it is an iPost page interface, then I will display the hash one, so the edit one. If it's the home page, I will display the plus menu item. And to make sure that everything synchronizes correctly, I will remove any other menu item which comes after the edit one. And in this scenario, I will just populate all the groups and add menu items to the menu. So this is basically how the menu is being populated. And as you see in the code behind of this page, I have implemented the homepage interface on this one. I've already added a post page as well, which will display the details. And the post page is basically the same as the default page. It is derived from the abstract class, but instead of the iHome page, it implements the iPost page. And as you can see, the criteria operator is slightly different. So I'm going to do a quick build again. I'm going to reload it. And if I now click more, you'll see that the post page is already working. And it is in this scenario displaying exactly the same stuff. But what you can also see is that the plus has changed into the hash, and that was of that menu loading mechanism. And as you can see, all fields are in there. So those are a couple of steps that we needed to do. Let's get back to the article control and implement the image gallery. I'm going to switch to design mode. And we will be inserting it into the gallery panel. So let's open up our toolbox. Let's go a bit to the top. And here we will have the image gallery. You can already see that it is a design time view already. So that's pretty cool. And what you might remember, let me take a quick step to the model, because what we have done in the first webinar, we have created a table where the images are being stored in. So we need to get those images out of the database. Fortunately, the DevExpress controls have foreseen in this kind of functionality. So to get those images out of the database and displayed in the web page, you normally should create a handler which will get the data out of the database and put it to the output of the handler. But you don't need to go that way because it's way simpler. I'm going to switch to source, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to bind that gallery also to an Xpo Data Source. And to do that, I'll put in the Xpo Data Source and explain to you what happens in a minute. I'm also going to put in a couple of properties here. I'm going to switch back to design. If I go to the Xpo Data Source, what I've done, I have specified that attachment class. I've also set up criteria parameters, and I want to get all attachment of the current page. And the current page is identified by a query string. And if we go back to the browser, you'll see that this is the identifier. So what you can do is you can set up that parameter to be a request.query string with that ID. So you don't need to do anything to select the data whatsoever. It's all being taken care of. The only thing you obviously need to do again is you need to set that session to this object. So I've done that already. And now the interesting part comes, because this image gallery, let's go back to the properties. That image gallery has a data source property. So that will be my attachments one. And once it has selected that attachment, let me get that out of the way, there is a property which is called image content bytes field, which is our binary data field where the actual data is stored in. So that image gallery does, it will get that data out of that table, and it will create some runtime handler, so you don't need to do anything for it, and it will just display the images. And I think that's a pretty awesome feature. And to make things fast, it also has some caching mechanism inside the gallery. So what it does is it will request that image once, it will flush it to a temporary folder, and with the next request it will get that temp file. It will also determine whether it's changed. You can set a number of properties here where to locate those files. And there is also some stuff for the data, for the database. Let me set it to this one. And you can set quite a bunch of properties to make this thing look the way that you want. So That's, I think, a pretty awesome feature. Let me do a quick build, and then we should be able to upload some images. So I'm going to the home page, and I'm going to add an additional post. I'm going to make it active, and as you can see, I can now select this group, or I could just add another one. I can use existing tokens or add a new token. As you can see, I get a list of existing tokens as well, so I can just pick an existing one. And I'm going to insert a couple of images. So let me go to my folder. Let me just go to the pictures. And let me insert a couple of nice pictures while I was in Indonesia. As you can see, I can select a couple of them. I'm going to open them up. They're being uploaded immediately. And when I hit OK, you'll see that something has not updated already. So that is a bit of a bummer, but we're going to fix that in a minute. If I just reload the page, then you'll see that another group has been added to the menu and my second post is in. So let's click on the More link. And as you can see, the images are getting straight out of the database by just setting a couple of properties. And well, the image gallery can be customized any way you like it. I've decided to let it look like this. And as you can see, you could go to the thumbnails, and this stuff is getting all out of the database. And it's just as simple as that. Alright, so what you did see is that I needed to refresh the page. And that is of course not that nice. So I have implemented some additional stuff. So let's go back to the home page and let us go back to the master page in Visual Studio, because we can solve that fairly easy. What I can do is in the master page, in the end callback, we will do the hide window. So if everything went okay and we do the end callback, then the window for adding the blog post is being hidden. I can insert some additional code here, because if you take a look at a bit of the internals of the JavaScript library of DevExpress, you'll find that there is a method which can traverse all DevExpress controls which are put on that page. There is a collection which is being kept. And how we can do that is that method, you should use it with care, I have to warn you, because it is a method which is double underscored. So if I paste this code in, you'll see that it starts with 2 double underscores, and you should be a bit careful with it, because yeah, these kind of methods are like basically for internal use, and they could change in future versions. But the most interesting method in here is a for each control. It will just go through every DevExpress control, whether it is a label or a grid or whatever. They're all in this collection, and it will execute this method for all of those controls. And what I'm doing in that method, I will check whether there is a custom property set which is called CP callback CMD, which stands for custom callback command. So if it is there, and the control also has a method called perform callback, then I will perform the callback on that control with the callback command which was specified. Well, I've done a bit of work up front, so I'll show you some code in here, because there are a couple of things which needs to be updated. One of them is the menu should be reloaded, and another one is the data view should be reloaded, and maybe some other things. But the most important ones are the menu and the data view, so your posts are being displayed once you hit OK. And what I've done there is I have created a couple of additional events, which is the menu is placed inside a callback panel, and that callback panel has the custom JS properties coded, and I'm setting it to reload. I've also coded in the callback method of that callback panel, and it checks whether that parameter is reload, and if it is so, it's going to call the update menu, which we saw in a couple of seconds ago, which will repopulate the menu. You see? So it's just doing code that we already had. I've done the same on the default page, but there is a base page involved. So if I navigate to that one, you'll see that the callback command is also being set here, and there is also a custom callback method coded. So if I switch back to this view, you'll see that these two methods are being set just the way that I want. So while I have that code implemented, and we're going to add another page or another post, let's go back to here, and I'm going to add another one. I'm going to call it my third post. I'm going to add an additional group just to show you that everything is being updated correctly. And I will put in this one. Well, let me add a couple of additional images as well. Let me pick these ones. So I was actually at Indonesia and I was taking some surf courses, so that was really cool. And here's the proof. Let's hit OK. And as you can see, in one go, the holidays has been added and the third post has been added. So it's all going automatically. And as you can see, this was my surf instructor, and this was his surf collection. So this is how you can manipulate existing controls and performing some partial data loading all in one go. I have promised you that I would also implement the cloud control. So that's the last thing I'm going to show you. I've set up this cloud widget already. And as you can see, I'll switch back to design mode. Here it is. What I've also done, and for that I need to get back to the source, because the cloud control, I just wanted to use it once, and this is it. So the cloud control is a bit older, so it doesn't implement a callback mechanism. So what I've done there is I just placed a callback panel around it, and what I've done in the code is I only set, let me go to the bottom part, I have only set on that callback panel, I've set the reload property, and I've implemented the callback of that callback panel. and it's calling the data bind cloud control. And if you can take a look here, this is basically what it does. So it will, in this scenario, it will create an Xpo view, which is another method of displaying information out of the database. Because what I need is I need the number of items which are tagged with this particular tag. So that's done fairly easy with the view, because you can have some complex criteria operators which will be evaluated, so I can have the count property of those posts. And what I'm doing then is basically I'm setting a number of properties on the cloud control, and that's basically it. If I now go to the home page, switch back to design, then here is the sidebar content. So let me remove this text. And let's drag that cloud widget in. Let me double check in source if it's in there. Yeah, it's in there. So quick build. And a reload. And there is my cloud control. And now I'm going to show you a really cool trick, because I've implemented that custom command and that custom property. Let me add another post. I'm going to make it active again. I'm going to select an existing group, holidays. Now I'm going to add a couple of tags, and I have used this one for a number of times already, and let me put this one in there as well. I'll leave the image and I'll leave the text. Hit OK. Yeah, that was a bit of a bummer, because I should also add a new tag. So let me go back to the post one, because then I can edit an existing one. And I'll go back to design mode and drag that same cloud widget in there. That should come here. Let me double check if it's on the correct place. Yeah. I'll go to the fourth post. And here's the cloud control. And if I now edit it, I'm going to add in another tag. And as you can see, it is already updated. And you saw me just drag this control in, and no need to code anything else. So this is basically how we have bind the first two webinars together. And yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. Obviously, you can completely go mad on the design and put in some different classes and styling and stuff, but I'll leave that up to you. Amanda, are there any questions?
Hey, Don. Yeah, we had a couple of questions come in.
Yeah.
From Steve, he was looking for a field for MIME type. He said there were parameters for file name and the byte array, but he didn't see one for MIME when in the image gallery.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, apparently we don't need it to specify the MIME type to get the image out of the database. And as said, I've only specified a number of properties, and the DevExpress image gallery will take care of the rest. It will also make sure that some handler is being rendered into the page, and yeah, you can check that out fairly easy if you take a look at Firebug, for instance. I can open Firebug really quickly, and I'm going to paste this URL in. Let me get my second post with a couple of images. And if you go to the net, so you'll see quite some stuff coming up. And if I go to my second post here, you'll see that those images, they are being somewhere in this list, and this is one of them, for instance, I think. Yeah, here you've got one of those images, and apparently the image gallery knows what kind of image it is, because it will render the JPEG version already, the JPEG extension, as you can see. Let me open it in a new location. I said let me open this one in a new tab. So the image gallery is putting the extension behind it, so that's taken care of by the image gallery control. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Steve, let us know if you have any other questions. Other than that, though, that was the only question we had so far.
All right. Well, yeah, then in that case, I hope you enjoyed this 3-story webinar, and we will make this the source code of this project available for download. So keep an eye on the YouTube channel and stuff, and we will make this project available so you can play with it and maybe expand it or do something fun with it.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. Also, on top of that, we will post part 2 and 3 on our YouTube channel. Part 1 is already posted, and we will get the final 2 parts up this week. All right. Thank you, Don. Other upcoming webinars: Sipping from the Data Fire Hose with DevExtreme, July 8th, presented by Paul Usher and CTO Julian Bucknell. They'll investigate how your DevExtreme web apps can get at that most important and vital resource, your data. Paul and Julian will take an existing web app that uses the new Data Grid widget and demonstrate the different DevExtreme data providers. They'll go from sourcing the data from client-side JavaScript arrays to setting up OData, publishing web services, and maybe even show off a bit of PHP. So that's coming up July 8th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and you can register for that webinar at devexpress.com/webinars. Also, if you didn't know, we launched version 14.1 on June 3rd. If you missed any of our 14.1 webinars, they are recorded and available online at devexpress.com/webinars. We have WinForms, reporting, dashboards, ASP.NET Web Forms and MVC, and DevExtreme, all posted for you to watch at your own convenience. And that is it for this one. If you haven't already, please download and try 14.1 today. And that's it. Thanks for joining us. Thank you to Don. And of course, thank you for choosing DevExpress. Bye-bye.